We are 5.5 months away from the 2023 NFL draft, and I can already tell you that Anthony Richardson is going to be one of the most divisive prospects in the entire class. Today, we're going to take a look at his prospect profile and if he can be an NFL starter once he reaches the league. Let's get into it. What's up, guys? Welcome back for another 2023 NFL Draft Prospect Profile. Once again, we've been doing these for quite a while now, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up, and then also turn on those push notifications. We put out at least 5 videos a week, so we would greatly appreciate you doing that. Today, we're going to be talking about Anthony Richardson. And Anthony Richardson, as you heard at the very beginning, is going to be the most divisive prospect in this class. And there are a few different reasons why that we are going to get into as we go through this process. But today we're going to be going through his numbers, through his strengths and weaknesses, get into a little bit of film, and talk about if Anthony Richardson can be that game-changing player at the next level that we saw flashes of during his collegiate career. So let's get right into it. Anthony Richardson by the numbers. He was the number 9 dual threat quarterback in his recruiting class per 24/7 Sports. He was regarded very highly, but a lot of the issues that were on his high school tape, including bad ball placement, things like that translated to the collegiate level. So he's still very much so a projection, but that number 9 ranking comes on the back of him being an incredible athlete. We'll talk about that as we get into his strengths and weaknesses. 74.5 PFF grade under pressure. So for those that don't follow Pro Football Focus grading, and I don't blame you, but if you don't, this is actually a really good grade under pressure. Though when you remove his scrambling ability and his ability to take the football and create yardage with his legs, it does get a little worse. His passing numbers under pressure get a little rough, and I actually think I have identified one of the main reasons that is the case, and I think it's pretty fixable. But we'll talk about that. 26 total touchdowns in 2022. People are going to point to him throwing for under 20 touchdowns as a statistical reason not to, consider Anthony Richardson a top prospect in this class. He ran in 9 as well. He threw for 17, ran in 9. And so statistically, that's not terrible. And that's actually more than some other quarterback prospects that are being highly regarded. And then 7.4% of his pass attempts were dropped by Florida receivers. So that is an important note because a lot of, he earned a lot of criticism in his final game against Florida State. And a lot of the time he was actually putting the ball in good spots. Now, some of the time he was not, and that is definitely something that he will have to work on. But it's worth noting that his receiving core at Florida was not very good for him, and really that extends to the last 2 years. I believe last year it was 7.5% of his pass attempts were dropped. It's a pretty high number. It's not ideal. So, what does Anthony Richardson do well? Athleticism is the number one thing, obviously. If you watch Anthony Richardson play, you know that he has game-breaking ability. He can take just a simple read option to the house. His rushing ability is very reminiscent of Justin Fields and what he's doing at the NFL level. Arm talent. So he is very, very skilled at changing his arm angles, working out of structure, and that's the fourth thing here. When he's off structure, he's pretty lethal. He doesn't lose a whole lot of velocity or accuracy when he's out on the run, and that arm talent really shines when he can get moving. And then pocket navigation, pocket feel, pocket presence. Those things are actually the first thing that pop off the tape when I revisit his 2022 film. Um, Now, my little caveat here, I don't have a ton of his coaches film, his all 22. So there is a chance that some of these opinions change a little bit when I'm seeing the full field. But from a lot of what he does right and what he does wrong can be identified without the all 22. Now, once we get the all 22, maybe we get to see what he's seeing. And maybe that's going to reveal that he's actually a little bit better at taking care of the football and making sure that he's not forcing the ball into tight coverage because his Florida wide receivers were not good. Ricky Pearsall was the best one. Justin Shorter had his moments, but this was not a room to write home about. So and then the off structure ability, like I already talked about. And then weaknesses, mechanically, he's very inconsistent, and that affects his ball placement. And then velocity management. And what I mean by that is he really does not understand when he needs to throw with touch very well. I think we saw a little bit of growth in this area throughout 2022, but it's definitely still a little bit of an issue. So, uh, regarding the inconsistent mechanics, you may say, "Well, Christian, yeah, how do I know if you know what you're talking about?" I think that's a fair assessment, and so we're just gonna take a look at some film here. Give me 1 second here. So this is a good example of him showing good mechanics. So he flips his hips really, really well here. He gets his toe closed down. He gets his shoulder pointed exactly where it needs to be pointed. And he's got a firm, wide base that he can drive through the ball. He's a rotational thrower. That's a very popular thing in today's NFL. That's what Josh Allen kind of translated to. That's how Justin Herbert throws. It's very a common occurrence. Now, in this clip, I'm going to back it up a second here. In this clip, we're going to see the bad and where you see the inconsistencies and how it affects the ball placement. So on that last one, we saw a nice accurate completion over the middle of the field on a pretty simple coverage identification. It was a simple read option or RPO, and he pulled and he held the linebacker, and it was a really good play. On this next one, though, you're going to see these happy feet, this tap, 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 and then with him being a rotational thrower, everything has to be synchronized. Everything has to be in sync. And when he's tapping, his bottom half starts to go before his top half starts to go. And so that throws off his accuracy. And that is a lot of the reason we see inconsistent ball placement. We see him sometimes just throw the ball into the ground. And so I think it's worth noting that that is kind of happening on his film. Now, that's a good thing in most NFL teams' minds as well, because what they're going to see is the inconsistent mechanics, and they're going to say, "Oh, that I can fix." It's the guys that are just naturally inaccurate that they are terrified of. And then what I didn't put on as a strength or weakness, once again, I don't have the all 22, so I can't for sure say this, but from a going through progressions aspect and the things that you can see actually on the broadcast film, he does a really good job at ticking through progressions. That is not at all a weakness of his. And like I said, once we get the all 22, we might be seeing that he's ticking off, a receiver that's blanketed, another receiver that's blanketed, and then the third wide receiver that's blanketed. And then he panics, tap, tap, taps, feet start going, and bottom half starts going, and then he throws the ball into the ground when he finally gets to his third or fourth read. Throughout his film, we actually see him come back and hit a backside dig, though. And the backside dig, if you follow Cleveland Browns Twitter or anything like that, that was kind of a thing with Baker Mayfield. He could never get back to that backside dig because it's pretty difficult to work back to your third or fourth progression. Just in general, that's a difficult thing for quarterbacks to do. And we've already seen proof that Anthony Richardson has that ability. So I think NFL teams are going to be pretty excited about that. Um, in terms of where he's drafted, right now a lot of people are saying, "Well, I don't know if he gets there." Statistically, he has not been good. He's simply outside of the touchdown production and the fact that we have talked about how he didn't really have many weapons, and the fact that he was learning a new offense. There are a lot of different variables here. I just don't think statistically teams are going to be super intrigued with him, and honestly, statistics are kind of what push him down my rankings even a little bit because had he put together a Heisman-like season, I do have a production grade that I toss on these guys, and he would have graded a lot better. Unfortunately, he didn't, and he's still kind of sitting up there within my top 3 quarterbacks right now. He is my QB3. So now I don't have him as I'm confident 100% that he's going to be a starter at the NFL level. I think this is a guy that he's going to need to rework his mechanics. It's going to take some time, but we've seen the growth from his time at Georgia or against Georgia in 2021, which was his pretty much the only time that we got to see a full, really like unleash him type of game when Dan Mullen was in charge. And we've seen that growth since that game, and he was really good in that game. I talked about pocket navigation as one of his strengths. He's a very natural feeler of pressure, I think. It's not even something that, a lot of quarterbacks, they dip their eyes when they've got rushers coming. He doesn't. He just feels it and he moves, and he doesn't always try to get outside of the pocket. Sometimes he just navigates within. He steps up into a little hole, a little pocket within the pocket, and creates a little throwing lane for himself. And those are things that NFL teams are really going to like. I've seen a lot of, the NFL didn't like Malik Willis. Anthony Richardson is a much better prospect than Malik Willis. Now, Malik Willis had better statistics. He was playing at Liberty. There were a lot of different variables there. Malik Willis, when he was looking at the field, he was not doing a good job. And I think what we're going to find once everyone has the all 22 for Anthony Richardson is that he does see the field really well. And so once we tune up those mechanics, I think we could be looking at a very, very good quarterback. There have been a few quarterbacks that have come out that they've had to change their mechanics almost entirely. The most notable one is Josh Allen, but we're seeing it again with Justin Fields right now, where he's tweaking a lot of different, release point things. Anthony Richardson already has kind of a good release. I would say it's quick. I wouldn't say it's, short and to the point. I think that's going to be something that they work on as well. But overall, that's why he's divisive, right? He's not statistically standing out. I wouldn't say he's a statistic anomaly either. He did produce. The other piece of this is, and it's kind of not being talked about as much as I think it should. Anthony Richardson got hurt pretty early in the year. He hurt his ankle, and then he played on a hurt ankle all year. He kind of said as much in his final post-game presser. And so I think that probably impacted, his willingness to take off and run, or even, his willingness to stay in the pocket when he's about to get leveled and deliver a football. And that could impact his ability to throw under pressure and things like that. So one thing, with quarterbacks that I always like to discuss, and I've done it on some of the quarterback breakdowns that I've done, leadership and, how are they doing in interviews, post-game interviews, spring practice interviews, things like that. One thing that Anthony Richardson consistently talks about is connection, whether that's connection with his teammates, connection literally on the football field. That's something that I think is going to go a long way in interviews and in, this pre-draft process. And I think some team is going to fall in love with him. I don't think we see Anthony Richardson make it out of the top 20. And I think there's a chance that 20 is a little low at this point. I think with the physical tools, with the athleticism and arm talent combination, we've seen this before. But I don't know that we've seen too many athletes like Anthony Richardson in general. I mentioned Justin Fields twice already. This kid runs very, very similarly to Justin Fields. And, we didn't even have a whole lot of proof that Justin Fields could do that even at the college level. I mean, it flashed, but not as much as Anthony Richardson. So I think there's a shot that Anthony Richardson is a top 5 NFL draft pick. And so when we're looking at this from a fantasy football perspective, I mean, he should be drafted very, very highly in Superflex rookie drafts. You just have to, assuming that he gets first round draft capital, he's going to get his shot. Now, people will point to, Zach Wilson and maybe even Trey Lance at this point. That's a little different. Trey Lance is kind of similar because he's a physical runner and he's a good runner, but he was a pass first guy. I think Anthony Richardson is immediately going to step onto a football field once he gets his shot and be a fantasy performer. He would be a QB1 almost every week just with that rushing upside. And we know kind of what that is for fantasy quarterbacks. So that will do it for this prospect profile. Anthony Richardson is a guy that I will continue to talk about. I will continue to evaluate once I have more information. These things aren't final, but I did want to kind of highlight the reasons why I think he's divisive and maybe why teams will be on him even more so than what the media might think as we currently stand in December. But once again, guys, I do 1 or 2 of these a week. This is my second this week. Go check out the one I did earlier this week. I can't even remember who it was. It's been a long week. So go check that out. It's on this channel. Make sure you subscribe. And then if you want more content, we do have a Patreon. The link is in the description. As always, if you enjoyed this, make sure you hit it with a thumbs up. I appreciate you. We'll talk to you guys next time.